James Morrow, this should have been a format that would have played to Joe Biden's strengths, but it clearly didn't benefit him.
Well, no, I mean, it was pretty unbelievable because I was saying, and I think everybody was saying, the field had been tilted so much in favor of Biden, and they were going to do everything they could to drag him across the line. And I think Joe Biden failed the test there. I thought, though, that Donald Trump there, when Joe Biden got very nasty and personal there, kind of missed a bit of an opportunity there because there'd been a lot of speech and talk around the debate at that moment about, the question of retribution. And so many of these cases, Alvin Bragg and bringing the case in Manhattan and elsewhere, these are cases against Donald Trump that are absolutely about retribution for essentially his crime of beating Hillary Clinton in 2016 when she was supposed to be the president. And I think he could have sharpened that attack a bit more. I think Joe Biden absolutely failed this debate. I mean, he comes out with an absolute F, maybe a D minus to be charitable. But I think that Donald Trump missed a few opportunities to sharpen his attacks. And I think also by about the last third of the debate, he was kind of not answering the questions and just sort of repeating his own talking points, which I think probably caused a few voters to turn off.
Yeah, indeed. It's a good point. He certainly wasn't flawless, the former president, Annalise. And you got the sense Joe Biden did improve a little, but it was from a really low base to begin with.
Yeah, and even towards the end when he's asked about his age impacting his performance, he just completely did not answer the question. And I was surprised that Trump wasn't picking up on that more and lobbing more of that back at him. And so that goes to show that there was a very clear strategy on the Trump side to just let this play out in a way that we don't get to see. Because don't forget, this is in the context of a president who does the least media of any modern day president. He doesn't do the same number of interviews, he doesn't do the same number of press conferences, and we don't get to see as much of him speaking off auto cue as anyone since, frankly, the 1980s. So this is one of the rare opportunities we do get to see an unfiltered version. And the fact Donald Trump was smart enough to step back and just let that play out shows that he's got the strategy, he's got the long-term plan, and this should be a huge wake-up call for the Democrats.
Yeah, absolutely, Barbara. You've been around this before, where the press secretaries go out and spin as well as they could. How would you spin that if you're a Democratic staffer?
Hard to say, because when there's no meat on the bone, where do you go? And interesting that you should say press secretary, because then it begs the question, and also, what does Joe Biden have as a press secretary? Remember, she came in with her huge, looked like an encyclopedia or something in the beginning, and she hasn't really answered any questions yet. So there's very little spin going on, but it's pathetic that that Biden has not been able to have one strong Trump card over a 4-year period. Yeah, the economy's doing a little better, but that started really under Trump. And Trump is the one that kind of got that ball rolling. And then when they also started talking about people of color and what has Biden done, there's been very little, where I thought Trump would have made more play from the point of what he had managed to do with historically black colleges. And that is something that each university or college had to go back and beg every year for money from Congress. And he's given them a 10-year reprieve where they're going to have that money coming in automatically, and talking about also the numbers that Trump has had from people of color, especially black men, and his numbers have gone up substantially. And a lot of that is a reason because Trump is the first Republican candidate to have gone into the black communities and asked for those votes. And a few days ago, he was down in Atlanta, and he did go to a roundtable format of barbershop people and leaders in the black communities, done the same with the Latinos. And his numbers keep going up because younger people are not traditionally just voting for a Democrat because their parents or grandparents did. And a lot of people of color are now listening to I think the two main things that this election will come down to is they're going to be looking at who do I fear the most out of these two men, and or who can do the best job in helping to bring back America. And a lot of it is going to be weighed on those two. And then the undercap of that is, what are my needs? What are my concerns as someone trying to feed your family, to maintain your job, and to sustain a difficult economy when it comes to the prices of gas, food, things like that going on.
Yeah. And one of the issues that covers a lot of that terrain, James, is migration. And as we discussed earlier, it's where the former president was able to shift the focus back. He was, he would often pivot back to that on an issue completely separate to it, but he knows that that's his strong point.
Well, yeah, and I mean, this is just an unmitigated disaster, I think, this issue for the Democrats, for Joe Biden. This is entirely Joe Biden's fault. Illegal crossings were very low. Donald Trump was correct absolutely about that by the time he left office. And now in the last 4 years, we've had something between 7 and 10 million people, depending on how you count it, come across the border. So much of that is an absolute direct result of Joe Biden taking executive action in his first 100 days to undo Donald Trump's border policy. So it's a real cause and effect, direct link here you can make. And there's real chaos as a result. I mean, you see it in the streets of New York and all these cities. You see neighborhoods that are being overburdened, schools being turned into shelters, airports being turned into shelters, migrants getting free flights around the country. Really, some very horrible crimes have been committed, very publicly, crimes that have been really just, I don't even talk about how bad some of these things were. And people are saying these crimes, these murders and other crimes would not have happened had these people not been allowed in the country. And there's also people who've been on TSA watch lists and all sorts of other things. The border has been effectively opened at the South. And this is a huge talking point for the Republicans, but it's not just a talking point. I mean, it's a real problem, and it's affecting communities and Democrat communities, these Democrat cities where the mayors said, oh, we're going to be a sanctuary city. We're going to, hashtag welcome and all of that. Well, it's blown up in their faces tremendously. This is a point that Trump was absolutely correct to go back to over and over again. And there was one funny little point there, and Joe Biden, he started to go down this road. He started talking about how, but, something about illegal immigrants and the economy and a strong economy. And I think he kind of pulled himself back before suggesting, but, these illegal immigrants and the cheap labor they bring and the fact that they're undercutting American wages, that's helping to drive the economy. And I think he pulled himself back just before he started to get into that sort of weeds, which would have been even more disastrous for him. But this is an absolute stand up, walk up, start issue with the Republicans.